Hello. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? So I made it on time. Today's live is not going to be very long. I don't think it's going to reach an hour, maybe an hour maximum or 45 minutes. How is everybody doing? Can you hear me and can you see me? Hello, everybody there who is watching and everybody in the chat. Thank you very much. Thank you for confirming. Thank you, everybody who is not in the chat and only watching. Dzień dobry, jakiekolwiek ktoś z Polski. I said hello, anybody from Poland. O también buenas tardes a todos que hablan español. También. De Agencia Cósmica. And hello to everybody from the Spanish world. Well, today's live will be for those of you who were interested in the last video. In the last video, yes, the second part of the Stellar Navigation 3, which was about ether and deepening the subject about the inserts into the matrix. So this is for those of you who are interested in these topics. And if you are not super interested in these metaphysical subjects, but would like something maybe different, well, then this is only for those who are interested. I have always been super interested in metaphysical subjects long before this experience started for us. Always have been interested in how the reality works and the cosmology of things and cosmology of the mind and the operation of the reality and how all the modes of our souls operate and who we are and what the reality is. So this is for me very, 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 very interesting and mind expanding. Thank you very much. And hello, Bartosz, cześć. And all the regular helpers in the chat who are also helping in the Spanish world. Yes. Okay. I have my usual friend here who is also joining us for this introduction. I hope she's not going to be bothering us later on. I gave her a little bone, a little chewy thing, but she already ate it. I can make these lives usually when I'm by myself at night, when Matthias is at work, because when he's not at work, he's usually sleeping during the day because he works a night shift, and during the day he sleeps. So I cannot make these lives when he's sleeping because then he will wake up. So I need to be making these lives now. But the side effect of it is that I'm alone with the bongo. So I hope she's okay. Okay, well, I don't know anything about, because some of you are asking me about CERN. Some of you are asking me about the Georgia Stones explosions and all that, but I have no communication right now with the team. And myself, I really do not have that much to say about these topics. If anybody's interested in what was said before on the topic of CERN and artificial portals, then you can search that on our website and just type in CERN, because it was mentioned. The topic was artificial portals. It was explained what they were doing there and how it is impossible to do what they want to accomplish. But I know I wish I had some more fresh communication on the subject from our team, but we are still not in the communication. So I have nothing new on this subject, and also I have no inside scoop about the Georgia Stones. I have no idea what went on there. I just know bits and pieces, but I didn't have much time either to investigate this, because on Saturday, very soon we are leaving. It's our vacation with Matthias, and we'll be gone until 17th of July. So there will be no videos until then. And this is the last video. This is the last video before our trip. This is the last live. So enjoy it. I'm going to summarize some points that seemed important and interesting to me. I'm not going to go into the whole topic of the ether itself because I think it was very well explained by Athena herself, and there's nothing I can add really to this topic. I think it was pretty clear, and her position and her view of what the ether is was also very clearly presented in that video. We also have a previous video on the ether by Svarov Erra. I think we made it few years ago. So you can also watch that if you want to compare the information. Okay, so let's go right into the topic. I don't want to take too much of your time, but there are some points that I do want to mention. So 1 second, please. Okay, I'm going to make this here like that. Okay, so even though I said I don't want to mention anything about the ether, I do want to say one sentence here, because actually to understand how those inserts into the matrix work and everything around that, you need to understand how the ether, what the ether is, and how those computers view reality, view the matrix, view the etheric field. So just one sentence that I found interesting about the ether, when it was said that ether has a flow. It's a field, right? Consciousness, the field, energy field, but it has a flow inside, or direction or flow of its potential energy. So its potential energy is flowing, has its direction, and that flow we understand as gravity. As gravity, they understand as gravity. We, I mean them. That was the statement from Athena. That direction of flow of its potential energy, that flow we understand as gravity. A progression of ideas within that field is that flow, and that's gravity. And I just wanted to state this because this completely redefines what the gravity is, because we understand gravity here completely in a different way. So the scientists will need to completely reanalyze what the concept and phenomenon of gravity is in order to advance through their understanding, attempts to understand the universe. Also, if you want to deepen the subject of gravity, it has been mentioned here and there in different videos. There is no specific video on gravity, like separate video gravity, but it's been mentioned many times for years. So again, go to the website zvaru.org and type in a word search gravity, and all the transcripts that contain anything mentioning gravity will appear. I advise you to look into this, because it's super interesting how they understand gravity. It's totally different how we understand gravity. So just wanted to mention that. The chat is full of moderators, my beloved moderators who are also moderating the Spanish world. So thank you very much for your work. So let me continue here. So as it was explained, the computer on board, by the way, is just a term, computer. They are not like real computers like we understand computers to be. They are equivalents of something similar. So computer sees everything as energy, as ether. The computers do not see objects, do not see chairs and mountains and socks and horses. They see energy fields and in its numerical values and interaction between those numerical values, influences. And also what defines ether is that there is no here and there is no there. That's what defines ether. That's how these ships travel through ether, through hyperspace, jumping, because there is no here and there. They just manifest by wrapping themselves in the specific numerical address. It was explained already. I think you understand this, those of you who are following this channel for a while. So the distances are just our own relative to our interpretation, subjective understanding of the etheric field. But the distances in itself do not exist within the etheric field, just like time doesn't really exist. Here we have the principle of non-locality. That is something that defines ether, no distances. This was also explained in more detail in a video about non-locality. And also time has been explained many times. So I'm just here going through these points very fast, but each one of these points was discussed in detail in the past. Like, for example, time idea. Time idea, what is time? It was discussed in details also by Yaski. And how time is just a product of our perception, of the perception of a being with consciousness, with soul, how that consciousness animates the sequence of the events that it perceives, and that's time, the progression of ideas. The ether is just a soup of ideas. We are just a soup of ideas, and how we progress with those ideas, the logic of thoughts, and that's what shapes a series of sequences of experiences within a field. And that all that is generated by being with a consciousness, and that's what time is. That's what time is. So, and it's relative to each person. Why? Because each person is going to have a different velocity of those progression of ideas. So that's why time and also distances will be different to each being and each society. Each planet. For example, Taygeta, that's why it has a different time flow than Earth, and that's why we have all these time slips, temporal differences between time there and here, because as a society there in Taygeta, they have a specific agreement on how they perceive the flow of sequences and all that. They have a collective agreement. So their time flows differently than how it flows here. And this also answers the question, sometimes people are confused. Okay, you are saying time doesn't exist, and then you do talk about time. Well, this is again an example of something, that you have to view it from different perspectives to understand. There is no time, and there are no distances from the ether, but there is time from within the reality of each individual consciousness as it generates the perception of sequence of events. So here again, we have multiple views being valid and true at the same time. But anyway, let's continue on, because the most interesting stuff I want to talk about is actually a bit later. So next point I want to mention is, okay, that as I said, the computers on board who are responsible for, managing traveling through hyperspace, and the ones who are responsible for inserting the objects into the matrix, as I said, they only see energy patterns and interactions, things influencing each other in the ether field, without locality and without time. Please remember this point, without locality and without time, because it's going to be important to something that I want to mention a bit later, that those computers, they see the field, they see the matter, objects, situations, people as energy patterns and their interaction with no time and no locality. That's going to be important when I talk about the insertion of objects into the matrix. Remember this point. Now, okay, so the way they see the field is only through the mathematical numbers, and they represent objects, right? Like it was already explained in the past video. I feel like I'm repeating myself sometimes. I hope you are not too bored with my explanations, but anyway, the most interesting stuff is what's coming. So the computers see everything as mathematical number fields that represent objects, and that is the matrix. That is that matrix, like in the movie Matrix. Not the matrix like sometimes we talk about the matrix as a system on Earth, manipulation, control methods, religions, and all that. That's like that's like a different type of a matrix. Here we are talking about this numerical so-called digital matrix, etheric fields and all that. So computers the computers see everything as numerical values at the subatomic level, very, very, very tiny, minuscule level. So they can easily alter and take control over the matrix. Yes, they can alter, redefine, rearrange those numerical values, interaction between those values, because they have this capacity to perceive this at a subatomic level. Now, it will be interesting to know what exactly is happening, like who is in charge of if anybody is really in charge of the main, let's say, center place of the control of the matrix on Earth. I remember it was said that it was Arcturians who were in control. Then also Taygeta at the time also had control over that. But no, that I think, okay, I think I'm wrong here, because what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the lunar matrix control system, the frequency control from the moon. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Hey, Bongo, she's gonna, Bongi. But here, the access to this technology, to those computers that can see everything at the subatomic level, I think a lot of races have the access to that technology. So yes, you can easily rearrange, and I think it's being done. I think I said that in a previous life, that I feel like there's a lot of done in that, a lot of things are being done in that way in our reality, inserting objects in certain situations, altering things. You know, the Federation is always saying that they are not supposed to interfere, and they're supposed to let things, to the people's own actions. But I think a lot is being done behind the scenes. I don't know how much, but I'm pretty sure it's being done. Anyway, not to repeat this point because it was said in the previous life, let's continue. So another interesting point here, which you already know, of course, again, is that not only beings with a soul have consciousness, everything, absolutely everything, all matter that exists has consciousness, matter or whatever, everything. Why? Because everything is sustained by the energetic mathematical action of the field that surrounds it. So everything has consciousness because everything is ether, because everything is included within the ether. So logically and automatically it's understood that everything is consciousness, because everything included in the ether is consciousness. Ether is consciousness. So everything is consciousness. That's just a logical sequence of thought here. Okay. Now we are getting here into something interesting, into the inserts, into the matrix and all that. The action that sustains each single object, person, situation, planets, atoms, everything, that action is self-feeding. It's a self-sustaining action based on vortex mathematics, the toroid. Everything is self-sustained and everything is self-defined, because everything is a toroid. As long as it's self-recycling into itself, it's going to have the existence. Everything is self-sustained in that way, by auto action, by self-action. And that motion, like I said here, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. That's why I'm making these pauses. And that motion sustains everything that exists. Okay, but here it's what's interesting. And here is where we begin to understand the topic of the inserts more. Everything is self-sustained and self-defined in this toroidal, cyclical, self-feeding manner. Okay, but not only that, but also there are external influencing factors of the toroid, of the field that surrounds it. So everything has its own internal mathematics, self-sustained, but it is also influenced by the internal mathematics and interactions of other objects, situations, of what surrounds it. And Athena here says that it's not just that these objects, you, people, whatever, anything, are influenced by those external influencing factors, but they are the product of them, because nothing is isolated. There is no separate individual independent toroid that just sits there on its own, but it's with included, integrated, incorporated within one mass that is the ether, and interacts with everything else around it. So here, that's why she mentioned this philosophical question: is there really a free will? Is there really a free will if everything we think, we do, our decisions, everything is a consequence of the interactions and the interchange of energies with everything around us? Then is there really a free will? We have a video on that as well. Is there a free will? Or the free will from the higher point? Is there a free will? Depending what level you are looking at this from, there will be a free will, and from highest point of all, there is no free will. So that's that. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, I don't want to get too distracted, but yes, I have a chat here going on. So anyway, this is a separate subject. This is a separate philosophical debate here. Do we have a free will or not? From one point, yes. From another point, no. I'm not going to go into this right now. But everything is influenced by everything around it. Toroids are not alone. They are fed constantly by external elements as well, which also are self-defining and are also toroids, because nothing is separate, nothing is isolated. And the toroids interlap with each other, and toroids are also included within other toroids, etc. Like, for example, this this phone on the table. So right now it is a toroid. It's interacting with me, that is a toroid. So we are like overlapping, but then we both are within a toroidal field of the sofa. And then we are also incorporated within the toroidal field of the room, of the house. And then this house interacts with the toroidal field of other houses, country, planet, galaxy, to the infinity. And that's how it works. We are a toroid within a toroid within a toroid, overlapping with other toroids. Nothing is separated, and no toroids stand alone, from smallest particles to the galaxies. That's why, and this is where it's understood why those inserts into the matrix are not that easy as it seems. That's why any alteration to the matrix will affect the whole system, will affect the whole system of things. So when you insert something, the mathematical bonds have to be formed first to hold the object inside the receiving toroid. For example, if you insert a phone within the sofa, so that sofa is interacting with the phone, so it's a receiving toroid, and then the room is a receiving toroid. So you need to insert the whole numerical value and mathematical bond that hold the object within the receiving toroid, the reason of its being there, the reason, the justification why it's there. Thank you very much, guys, who are in the chat room, by the way. Thanks, Jay Garza and Miss Mouseboy. Thank you. So the reason must be there. The reason must appear. Why it's there is its reason for being there. So here so not only the the very dynamic of the object must be there, the standing waves that are forming the object itself, right? Because this object has its own internal dynamic that is forming and self-sustaining. But also, you must insert the link with surrounding toroids. The link with the surrounding toroids. And now, on top of that, you also have to insert, or there have to emerge, the previous dynamic on top of the actual dynamic of why this object is there and how it got there. The whole sequence flow must emerge, must be there. So it's not as simple as, for example, Yashi, can you insert me a ticket to Hawaii? Because I remember we had these conversations a long time ago with Baru Ferra. And I was asking, hey, why don't you just, like, as a joke, I was saying, hey, what about if you like insert me something fun, or I don't know, the ticket to Hawaii or something like that. And Bongo's going nuts. Maybe I'll show you later. She's destroying her huge bear. Anyway, why don't you insert me the ticket to Hawaii? And I remember she said at that point, without going into these details, she said, well, it's not that easy because I need to then insert the airline, who bought the ticket, with what money, with what bank, why, all that situation around it, and the whole prior dynamic, time dynamic reasoning around it. So it's not that easy. But only now I truly understand this topic more, because it was explained here in detail. And now, interesting point here is that when they insert the object, 1 second, please. 1 second, please. Yes. Okay. Now, the interesting object fact here is that Athena said that this is how they actually insert the objects, not by like literally taking the objects and coming with the ship and lowering it with the tractor beam and putting it there on Earth. That's how I understood it. But actually, by energetic imposition, the tractor beam can do that, for example, by energetic imposition, that tractor beam inserts the energetic mathematical factors and their relationship with the environment, and that will form the object. So you are sort of printing that object by being able to modify the numerical values within the field. But you are not like literally taking the object from the ship and just coming and taking a UFO and taking and bringing it to Earth. But by thank you very much, Mrs. Mouseboy. But they are doing that by altering the numerical values of the field with the tractor beam or however. So that's very interesting. So I guess if you are in the forest and they will be doing that, I guess that object would just like appear out of nowhere, just appears out of nowhere within the matrix. I guess I would have to ask. So now, very interesting point here, and one of the most interesting and important point here of this live, and one of the reasons why I wanted to make this live, is to explain to you that 3D and 5D, even though, right, they are mental states, but let's say they are the 3D around Earth, the Earth, and outside, what's going on outside, they are their own separate toroids with their own dynamics. So, very important point. So that's why you cannot really insert anything from the outside without, like I said, without creating a reason why it exists there, but within the 3D formulas. So if you insert something from 5D that has its origin and roots in the 5D reality outside Earth with its own dynamic and its own internal mathematical flow of things and its own formulas that 3D dynamic and the 3D toroid does not have, then when you insert something, the matrix will create the reason will appear, the situation, the justification of that thing will appear, but only within the 3D formulas that can sustain it. Within the 3D formulas that can sustain it. If you insert something from Temer to Erra, it doesn't happen this way because they are both within the 5D toroid. They have the formula to interpret that inserted objects. But the 3D Earth would not have the formulas to understand that object if it's something extraterrestrial from outside. So it will only read the part that it can read, that it can interpret and understand. And the reason will appear by itself, because that's another point I'll mention later. The reason appears by itself, by the matrix, but only within its own field, only within its own formulas. And this is why this is very important, because this explains, this is one of the reasons why no extraterrestrial proof of that sort can exist within a 3D without the matrix creating a 3D reason behind it, in the process destroying its 5D origin. That's why the 5D proofs of this sort do not work, because as soon as they are inserted into the 3D mathematical field, they become 3D, because the 3D doesn't have the capacity to interpret that what is out from outside its own field. Our toroid has no formulas. It's kind of like Windows 9 and Windows 10. And we have this example was given by someone in a Telegram group in Spanish, I think, or in English. I'm not sure. Sorry, I don't remember. And they explained that if you create a file, for example, with the Windows 10, and then you try to open that file or whatever file or whatever folder, then if you try to open that with a Windows 9, the 9 doesn't have formulas to read that and to open it. So it will only open the part that it can read, because it has tools only to interpret what is within its programming, Windows 9. And the part that was designed and created by Windows 10 is left behind. It's like it's not there. It cannot be seen. It's invisible. It's not read by Windows 9. And that's what happens with many of these proofs. Thank you very much, Al Sanchez. And that's why they cannot insert some of these proofs, because right away the 3D reason will appear. The 5D part will be left behind, will be invisible. No one will be able to see that. All the justifications, 3D justification, will appear to explain that phenomenon or to explain that object or situation or person. Even person. By the way, I'm going to mention that a little bit later. Person. Topic of mirrors here. Actually, right now I'm going to mention it. Yes. So when you have a person, a step down, an extraterrestrial person coming down from the ship, physically walking the earth, well, I don't know how, I will have to ask, but somehow the matrix recognizes that person as not belonging to its field, to its toroid, like it's someone from the outside. So this is how mirrors, among other ways to create mirrors, the way I understand it, this is how the mirrors of these people are created. They are sort of a 3D interpretations of that 5D person that is going back to the ship. It doesn't belong to Earth, but what's left behind of its presence leaves the mark, and the mirror person gets created. The mirror person, for the people who are new, is the person that looks like a 5D person and has life here on Earth as a human, but they mostly look physically like that person above, but they don't know anything about their connection with their extraterrestrial equivalent, so to speak. And sometimes they are just matrix people, The matrix created that person, that life, to justify the presence of that 5D extraterrestrial person that walked the earth. So sometimes it can be just a matrix person, organic portal. But the way I understand, sometimes it can also be viewed as simply that same person in 5D, sort of in another timeline. This is where it gets a bit complicated, and we haven't described this topic in detail yet. It's kind of really out there, even though I know most of you already are used to these topics and understand most of these really crazy ideas. For me, it's like I accept everything at this point. For me, it's nothing can surprise me. But yeah, the topic of mirrors, I would like to explain this more in detail, but we haven't had a chance yet to go into depth with them on this topic. But going back to the inserts, this is one of the reasons how the mirrors of the people emerge uh, on Earth, because the matrix cannot handle the presence of the extraterrestrial person. So it has to create some sort of a explanation of that person. And the whole life gets emerged. I mean, the whole life emerges around that person. This is something really interesting and freaky in a way. It's beyond my understanding how it's done, but somehow Matrix produces the whole life around that person as well, memories and all that. So what you have to remember here is that the 3D toroid and its own internal mathematical field will always level up uh, with its own formulas, only with its own formulas, the presence of something that is outside its dynamics. It will always just reflect what it can read from whatever phenomenon or objects or whatever situation is inserted. So that's very interesting, and that's very important. That's very important. And that's one of the reasons they gave us, among many reasons. There are different reasons about the whole subject of proof and all that. But that's one of the things people do not fully understand, that no 5D so-called proof uh, can be inserted into the matrix without what I just said emerging and manifesting. It just becomes normal. It finds its own explanations within our own matrix, and people find those explanations because you find it because the matrix provides those explanations. That's why also here we can also mix it up with the topic of photos sometimes. It's not exactly what happened in our situation with the photos, where there was this problem of the pornographic photos or whatever. That was inserts from the Federation or from other non-friendly people or non-terrestrial people who are working against Taigetans. But I also believe, and I also know, that this is how it works with the topic of photos, that sometimes the presence of the extraterrestrial can actually can cause, like I said, because it has to justify the existence of that person. So even the photos can appear of those people that have nothing to do with that extraterrestrial person. So it's quite complicated, but yes, that's how it is. And now, okay, I'll take a little break. Okay, so now I think I was also explaining why, how this reason behind the inserted objects or situation or the person gets created. Do they have to also insert that? And the way I understand it is, no, it gets created and absorbed by the matrix by itself, and the matrix creates dynamics around it alone. You insert the object, and then it creates the shock waves along the field, because like I said, Nothing is isolated. That object will not be isolated from anything around it, creates shock waves. It creates chain reactions. It creates chain reactions along the field around it. And matrix alone alters values and creates the reason why that thing is there. And now, remember what I said? Remember the point of non-locality, that the ether has no distances and no time? Well, it's going to be important now. That chain reaction that is created around that inserted object has no bearing. How would I say this in English? Has nothing to do with time or with distances. Retroaction of that chain reaction does not matter, is not a problem, which means that when those shock waves begin and the matrix alters the values and create chain reaction, because it does it from the etheric field, so to speak, because it only sees etheric numbers, right? Etheric numbers when there is no locality, those chain reactions and justifications and reasons around that object can also be something that happened in the past, because it's accessing from the ether into the past. And the reason behind that object existing can be something that from your perspective will be 10 years ago. Retroaction here is of no importance and of no difficulty to this process. And this is important because, for example, if the cabal or regressive race or whatever wants to insert something that's going to prove something they need to be proven, the reasoning behind that inserted object, the roots, memories, even historical dates will appear, historical events, situations. Other objects that sustain the existence of the first inserted objects will appear that may have its origin in the past, and it's going to serve them as a validation of whatever they want to validate. This is done. This is easily done, and it's super important, and it's super curious. Um, like I said in the past video, in the past life, if they want to prove the existence of a specific event, they want to insert an object, and then that object will create that chain reaction that will connect to other events in the past. So it will all be logical from our perspective, and archaeologists will understand it in a very logical way, in a sequential way, but it's the matrix itself that created those numerical values around that inserted objects, because it had to be sustained somehow and explained. So it's crazy. So in that sense, I mean, how can we even know what's real, what's not real? You insert the object and the memory will appear in my neighbor. For example, you insert the object in front of my house that is like sort of on the neighbor's lawn, and that object will have its owner. Okay. What I want to say is that I remember Yaski told us once that if they insert something and we want to get it, for example, we were talking about it in the theory, we want to get it, come and pick it up, we need to do it fast. We need to do it fast because the matrix itself will absorb it by the process I just explained in this life. Will absorb it, which means it will find its owner. The owner will appear. Memories will appear. The whole chain of events of behind that object will appear, will be logical to that person. So, for example, like I said, if Yaski inserts something in my neighbor's lawn, and if I don't get it fast, that object will belong to my neighbor. The neighbor will remember getting it somewhere. The neighbor will remember the whole event where it was purchased. It will remember where it was purchased, by whom. And then, I mean, that person who sold it to my neighbor will also remember having solved that object, I mean, it's nuts. The whole sequence of events will appear, all because that small object was inserted. It creates these shock waves along the matrix, which, like I said again, it just turns everything around upside down about historical facts, historical events, historical occurrences, objects, artifacts, all that. It's just nuts. Whoever has the control of this technology and like is, you know, and wants to dominate. The matrix, the system on Earth, they could do crazy out there things with this technology, and we will never know the truth, because whatever they insert, it will create other situations that explain that object and will be just logical and natural. The archaeologists will understand it that way, of course, as historians as well, and we will never know what the truth was. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. That's why this technology is something you have to be very careful with, and it has a lot of ethical consequences around it, and that's why it's not so easy as just, hey, Yaski, insert me a new dress for tomorrow, or insert me a Tigetan uniform. I want to see what it's like. No, it cannot be done that way. And there are rules around using this technology. I would really like to know, and I would like to ask Athena or Yaski or Aneka about the regressive races in the Cabal, if they have the access to this technology. I'm pretty sure they do, of course, and how much they are using and how much it was used in the past. Or if she knows even like what was inserted and what event, what artifact was inserted and which one wasn't, and all that. And now another point, and we're going to finish this with this point. Why one reason appears and not the other, and that's because it has to be something that is most logical for the existence of that object, sort of. So if I get something from them inserted in Finland, for example, and it's just sitting somewhere there, the owner will be a Finnish person and not someone from Dominican Republic, because that's going to just be most ordered, mathematically logical sequence of events. So the matrix, that numerical field, is very logical, very, very ordered, very structured, very interesting. And it's even like Athena said, the roots of the mechanics of the process of this even escapes their understanding. This is just super deep and fascinating and complex, how the reality itself creates all that, and it's just amazing. For us, it may seem invasive, and in a way it is, when, for example, Yaski inserts something on the lawn of my neighbor, and that neighbor will start to have memories about that thing. Yeah, of course, it's something invasive, but like Athena explained, it is only invasive from if you are looking from above, but then from the perspective of that person, those memories will be very natural and very. It's nuts. It makes you think how much of what you know and what you remember is the result of the of the uh, of the flowing toroids around you and them influencing you in objects and events being inserted, all that. It makes you question a lot of things. But on the other hand, it's super fascinating. I do believe, yes, that the Mandela effect is associated with that, very much so, yes, because like I said, even the whole situations can be inserted. So if the situation can be inserted, that changes the whole toroidal mechanics of the field around, and then people start to have different memories, and it's nuts. It's really fantastic to think about these things, and to be delving into this. It's fun. Some people might find this like worrying or confusing. They might feel like, okay, this is just too much. What do I do with my life, because it's all so unstable, and But for me, actually, it's the opposite. I find it super super liberating, knowing there are no limits to the consciousness and to the reality and what can be done. And it just, I'm just flowing within this field of whatever etheric field and all its possibilities and all its potential. So thank you very much. That's it. That's all I have in my life. I just wanted to get those points across. I don't have more. Of course, the video was much more, but that's all I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to go on vacation, like I said, on Saturday. Maybe I'll send you some photo, or maybe I do a short live, hello live, somewhere sitting under the palm tree or whatever. And then on the 17th, we'll be back. I'll be resting maybe a few days, because when you go on vacation, sometimes you need vacation from vacation. So I'll be resting for a few days, and then I'll start doing new videos. I have 2 more in this series of these metaphysical, insanely fantastical information, stellar navigation. 2 more. I also want to publish the information on Saturn, and more and more and more. And maybe, hopefully, I'm thinking we will know something from our Taygetan and Svarunian team. Oh, yeah, Mick Flair just mentioned that. What was the last day of contact with the crew? It was somewhere in the first week of May, somewhere around that time. I do not remember. I will have to look at the last conversation. The last conversation was with Athena. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close this live. Enjoy your vacation as well. If you are missing me, just look at the videos from the past. There is so much there, and that's that. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you. Enjoy your July, and I'm going to see you all when I'm back, and maybe a short video or something, a short greeting from Spain. Okay? Thank you. I'm a bit worried to go, actually, because I'm like, I almost can't believe that it's possible to travel. So I'm like, oh my God, I hope we get there and there's going to be nothing, no requirement. I'm almost not believing that it's happening, because for the last 2-3 years, it was like impossible to go anywhere. So I'm almost not believing that it's happening. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye bye. I am signing off right now. Thank you, Oneva. Thank you, Pilm Soul. Thank you, Al Sanchez. Bye bye. Happy girl. Bye, everybody.